May 17th, 1999, Framingham, Massachusetts. He told me not to look at her in the glass. I looked. My curiosity led me to open the invitation addressed to me, and the seal was green wax. It was pressed with a tiny sprig. By the time the bells stopped, the veil was hanging where no bride could reach it. Bells, bells, bells. A musky floral scent filled the air as I pulled out an invitation inviting me to the wedding of Ambrose Strawbridge and Ursula Montel. It was dated Friday evening, 7 p.m. at Magnolia Manor, that creepy house Ambrose and I used to walk past on the outskirts of town. The dread swarmed my body. This couldn't be real. Ambrose was dead. I thought it was a trick. Maybe one of Ambrose's old friends did it. A few weeks passed. Declan Winterson saw me in town, patted me on the shoulder, and enthusiastically shouted, "Ambrose, my man, how's it going?" My face fell, and when he realized he'd got the wrong brother, so did his. The uncomfortable feeling continued as I had no choice but to tell him that Ambrose had died 3 months ago. Even as an adult, I would always be Fenton Strawbridge, Ambrose Strawbridge's weirdly ordinary twin brother. Despite all this, I missed my charming brother deeply, and I felt as though a part of myself was now incomplete. I became more introverted by grief and only left my house when the need was unavoidable. As a toy maker, this was simple enough. I had an online store where I mostly crafted bespoke dollhouses and wooden train tracks. In a world of plastic and broken things, a longing to hold on to the tradition of times past seemed to last. I was glossing a fire truck in my workshop when my roommate Gordo appeared with an envelope addressed to me that he'd found in the mailbox. It didn't have a stamp on it, and the letters of my name were written in swirly ink. I turned it over, breaking the green wax seal to look inside. There was an invitation to a wedding of the dead. I didn't know an Ursula Montel. Ambrose's girlfriend had been called Angela. She cried on my shoulder at the funeral and sobbed how despite our identical faces, I didn't share her beloved's good looks. Magnolia Manor was one of those derelict houses that used to be something more but became something deemed insignificant. In our youth, Ambrose longed to go in there and explore, but I never wanted to. Eventually, he stopped asking me. Knowing my brother, he probably found another means. I ignored the wedding invitation at first. I stuck it in a drawer and tried to rid it of my mind. It was inevitable. I would go. On Thursday afternoon, Gordo found a box on the doorstep addressed to me, and in it was a black suit with a moss green tie that smelled like magnolias and old smoke. I felt compelled to run my fingers along its seams and breathe in the musky scent. By Friday afternoon, that invitation was all I could think about. I changed into the suit, placed my khaki jacket over it so I felt more like myself, and then I drove to Magnolia Manor with my stereo blaring some screechy pop song, glad of the distraction from my own doubts. I parked a block away and I walked toward the manor, a silent walk in an otherwise deserted area of town. But there it was, the manor. Its gray stone building mostly disguised beneath the wisteria. Stone creatures were set within the exterior, their rocky eyes seeming to follow me as I walked up the cracked dirt path. I used a heavy iron knocker, a lion's head, and when it fell, that ring hit my bones. As I turned to leave, I heard that chiming. 3 chimes, clean as a clock. I turned to see the door wide open, leading into a hallway of ornate encrusted darkness. I stepped inside. A cold chill followed me in, and I spun around, noticing the fractured walls and cracked ceramic tiles. The ceiling bearing only the rusty fittings of where a chandelier must have once been. I could almost see it. I danced on the hard floor, imagining a time when this place was magnificent, when this place was alive. Suddenly, I became aware of the silence, the coldness. I saw faces in the dark walls that I had missed before. Eyes that seemed so obvious now, ones that watched me as I pulled the invitation from my pocket and I examined that broken wax seal. The floral scent seemed to burst free of the invitation and turn rotten around me. I felt sick when the realization of where I was and what had lured me to come here. 3 chimes rang out again. "Well, you've had your fun. I'll be leaving now," I said out loud. I walked toward the door, ready to end this now and go back to my ordinary life. Before I reached it, this gust of wind slammed the door shut. Footsteps sounded behind me, enough to cause me to turn and listen. I followed them, stepping over cracked tiles as I walked through the corridors. Running footsteps disappeared downward, and steps appeared, ones leading into a basement of sorts, gripping the black banister formed with twists and swirls. I descended the stairs into the underworld of this place. The ornate darkness seemed to follow me, and I was met with my reflection in the mirrored walls. The mirrors were foxed, silver pitted into starbursts that looked like eyes. A reflection revealed in a smile I did not make. Ambrose stared back at me, his charming eyes full of secrets. I pulled on my tie, noticing him do the same with his. Behind him lingered a shadow of a woman in white lace. She seemed to float around him, flitting through the mirrors. I turned around, looking for my brother, looking for this woman, but neither existed beyond the wall of mirrors. I rubbed my eyes, and the people in the mirrored walls seemed to fade around me, leaving only my twitchy-eyed, hunch-shouldered reflection. I was imagining things. This place felt tortured, and mixed with my grief, I was imagining things that couldn't be. I looked at my dweeby reflection, and I saw the terror in eyes different from mine. Words whispered in my reflection that I didn't say. Words that boomed inside of my head in my brother's assertive voice. "Fenton, don't look at her in the glass. Leave." I usually did as my brother said. In life or in death, it seemed that this hadn't changed. I closed my eyes as I clambered up the stairs. I heard the swishing of fabric around me. I heard the clatter of heeled footsteps. I tumbled over my own feet and onto the hard steps, a force stepping on my tie, pinning me in place. Gripping my neck in a desperate attempt to loosen my tie, I saw her there, a woman in a lace white wedding dress, her own long hair woven into her gown, her eyes alive with a gaze of fire. A heel pinned my tie to my throat. I clawed at that knot, and I looked up. I looked at her, gasping for breath. I saw my brother's reflection in her eyes. "You'll have to do. I'm old," she smirked. Then she took her foot off my tie, and with a grip I could not fully see, she pushed me backward. I rolled down the steps, rolling that didn't seem to stop. Glass shattered around me, Ambrose's distorted reflection raining down on me. I raised my arms in front of my face, not understanding how this was happening. The glass cut my hands, embedding itself into them with envy. I stared at the shards in distress. His reflection was staring back at me, and in my head he said, "I'll distract her. Run." I charged up the stairs and through the maze of corridors. I ran around that nightmare manor, twinkling shadows seeming to follow me. I heard the footsteps echo around me as I ran, and I heard the chimes. 3 chimes, insistent now, with my maimed hands limp at my sides as I fumbled forward, my body connected with walls and doorways. Back in the entrance hall, I thought I'd made it. I heard shimmering above me, one I couldn't explain, and still my curiosity piqued, and I looked up. A 12-arm chandelier loomed above me, prisms catching little fires. A crystal pendant sparkling above me, sets of fiery eyes reflected within their beauty. I watched on, mesmerized, as it twinkled above me, not questioning where it had come from. I outstretched my throbbing hands, and pain began to dull. I placed them mid-air, and then to an unheard beat, I started to dance. As I looked up, I saw the woman's reflection there in the chandelier. She was gripping my waist as she danced with me. Her dress was swirling all around her. I could not feel her, but I sensed her. I saw her reflection, and while I danced, I could not feel my pain. Above me, I saw my hand move to her waist, and then I lifted her into the air, and she soared like a bird, and I looked proud. Only I didn't look like that awkward, typical me anymore. I looked confident and electrifying. I looked like Ambrose. I always longed to know what it would feel like to be him. I smiled, a smile that turned to a laugh. I wanted to stay there and dance forever. I wanted to be Ambrose. Hands pushed me to the ground. The chandelier fell like daggers around me, missing me by mere inches. I saw the pieces twinkle around me and used my hands to pull myself to my feet. Excruciating pain shot through my body. I stared down at my glass impaled hands, and I remembered the horrors that had just happened. Suddenly, more than ever, I felt like me, Fenton Strawbridge, Ambrose's weird brother. 3 final chimes rang out. As the chimes stopped, I heard the bride's distorted scream. Her veil twisted high in the prisms where no bride could reach. As I ran to the door, I held back my cries. I heard footsteps behind me, and I dared to look back. They danced in the shards, my reflection and the bride's. I thought it was me, that I was trapped. I gulped in despair. As he smiled, and then I saw the twinkle in his eye, I realized it wasn't me at all, it was Ambrose. I tipped my head a final goodbye as I fumbled with my elbows to open the door. My eyes fell upon it, right there, etched into the H door frame with a jagged heart, were the words, Ambrose, forever. I still see him sometimes. Ambrose. He's the twinkle in my own reflection. A smirk that I do not make. The laugh I do not utter. The thoughts that I do not think. He smiles when I don't. I always keep the mirrors covered, but I think about it often, about the secret deal my brother must have made. Magnolia Manor was demolished the following year. I heard locals were whispering of the rich family who used to live there, and an ill-fated bride who met an untimely death. I think my perfectly charming brother is still trapped in that wayward place, forever doomed to dance with his betrothed within the broken shards of glass. But what do you think? For more scary horror stories, please share and subscribe.